Welcome to the Water Polo New South Wales Coffee Club for female water polo coaches and all those involved with the female game. Water Polo New South Wales Coffee Club is a professional development series consisting of 6 conversations with 7 leading high-performance coaches in the women's game. This initiative is designed to support female coaches by providing a platform to connect, share experiences, and develop your coaching journey. The host for the Coffee Club series, as for the other conversations, is Dr Damien Taylor, who is a global leadership strategist and researcher with over 30 years' experience in the high-performance sport, corporate, government, and military sectors. The guest coach for this evening is Rowie Webster, who is a highly distinguished water polo identity. Rowie is a 3 times Olympian, performing at London, Rio, and Tokyo Olympics, and she was the Olympic captain in Tokyo, which would have been an extremely challenging experience, obviously, with that Games being held during the COVID period. She is at the Victorian Institute of Sport, Water Polo Australian Generation 32 coach, and I believe, Rowie, you finished up at the VIS on Friday. Is that correct?
I did, yeah. I've moved across to Water Polo Victoria.
That'll be part of the story today. Rowie is the 2024 Australian under-18 women's head coach. She's also the Victorian Phoenix National League head coach. In addition to that, she's also a member of the Australian Olympic Committee Athletes Commission. Welcome, Rowie, and enjoy the interview and conversation with Damien.
Thanks so much, Glenn. Appreciate your time.
Thanks very much, Glenn. Rowie, that's a fair introduction, and it's an honor and privilege to have the opportunity to talk to you. So thank you very much. I'm very excited to have a chat.
Yeah, likewise, mate. I think your resume was longer than mine, so that was great.
Thank you. It's important to understand where it all started from for the ecosystems that got you involved in the sport. So part of the journey is looking back and understanding how did you become involved in water polo?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've been reflecting on this a lot lately because I've done a full 360. Where I started is now where I'm at, where I've started working too. So I started through high school. My 2 older sisters played. My brother didn't. He played AFL, but you always just get kind of dragged around to the older sibling sporting events.
Yeah.
And I always had the dream of going to the Olympics for basketball. So I was a reasonable basketballer, and that's certainly where I got my kind of ball skills and hand-eye coordination from into the pool. And one day I got asked kind of if I wanted to fill in and play, and I said, yeah, why not? And I remember watching the Sydney.
Were you swimming at all at that stage?
Yeah, we were a big swimming family. We did a whole lot of surf life saving, so swimming was definitely in the blood.
So there's a background there for you of it.
Yeah, we were all water babies, so to speak, and we holiday, and I love surfing and things like that. So it was always part of the makeup of where I was going to head in the long run.
Yep.
But I was in year 7, the year of the 2000 Olympics, and I had just watched what now is the Stingers, but back then they weren't, the women's water polo team, do the ultimate thing and win gold. And I'm
at the first time in the Olympics.
Correct. Yeah. And it was a privilege. And I remember going home that night, just saying, Mum, Dad, I'm going to go to the Olympics for water polo. And just for perspective, I had just missed out on the Victorian state team as a 11-year-old who was the under 14s. I was 11. I was devastated
at that stage.
Yeah, I was devastated, and my older sister made it. So I had just supported her, and then I had tried it again for a second time at school, fell in love with it, and basically 12 years almost to the day, I walked out to the London Olympics. So
that's
it's kind of. Yeah, and I think part of it is...
What did you enjoy the first time you got into... So you got invited to help out, basically?
Yeah, I was basically just a number with a cap with 2 older sisters trying to throw the ball at me.
And what drew you to it?
It's really, I think, the competitiveness of all the sports that I loved. Like, I obviously loved the water, and then there was that physicality that you get in basketball. It was a little unorthodox for me, which is something that I've I've always really enjoyed doing things a little differently. And I think water polo is that sport. Like I used to wrestle with my brother.
Yeah.
So that was in there.
Yeah.
I played basketball. I used to spend heaps of time in the ocean, in the pool with my sisters. So it kind of was just a combination of all of it.
Yeah.
And then I think the most important thing was I had some friends that played.
Okay.
So
So it's a
just
good social
literally,
effort. Yeah.
yeah, literally just via kind of osmosis and wanting to be around that type of friendship and community, I just fell in love with it. And it
Yeah.
wasn't purely because I was good at it. I was actually not all that talented at it.
Yeah. But you obviously had that competitive nature, as you said, and that lit a fire for you to start getting better, even at that age.
Yeah, look, I spoke to when my grandma was alive. I spent a lot of being the fourth kid. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents because my
Yeah.
parents were busy with the other older siblings. But yeah, when my grandma was alive after the London Olympics, I asked her a question. She was always my biggest supporter, and I said, "Nana, was I always competitive?" And she said, "Buddy, you would have made it in anything you did. Like if you wanted to
Yeah.
get rich sweeping floors, you would have found a competitive way to beat everyone else." So I think it was just who I was as a person. And then
Yeah.
I got to kind of channel that into sport, which I
Yeah.
think is a real privilege that we have in Australia.
Did you have high expectations on yourself at even back at that stage? Because you didn't make it in the older sisters, was that fuel for you?
Absolutely. It was never about like beating anyone else. It was always about bettering myself from a very young age. I was always unapologetic about wanting to beat the boys in primary
Yeah.
school and all the races. And then no matter what I did, it was always the drive to just be better.
Yeah.
I was that kid that used to, muck around in the backyard. Like I didn't want to find an excuse not to do sport. So, yeah, I just made sure that I pushed every boundary I could to become better as a little tacker, and then that kind of just fueled the fire, and I think flowed through my career.
With the coaching, so early days in the coaching, were you encouraged? Were you supported? Were you given opportunity to grow and learn, or was more about positional and easy things? What do you remember about the coaching back in those days for yourself?
I think it was
Because you
it's
go
a
back to that, as you said, playing it forward. So, yeah.
yeah, it's almost like I think Australia has come a long way in our coaching approach, and I think the world has. I think we're leading in that space. And I remember, I was very early in my coaching career when the win well strategy came through.
Yeah.
And I believe I was part of the win at all costs generation.
So it
And
was more
so
autocratic back then, was it? And dictatorial?
yeah, very
Yeah.
autocratic. And I think it was, we were extremely successful. So as an Australian team, across all my years of playing, we buggered up a couple of Olympics, unfortunately, when I was there. But yeah, it was
Hindsight's
always we
2020.
were always in it to win it.
Yeah.
Which I think is part of the picture that I now take as a coach. Like you have to be unapologetic about it is still high performance sport, and high performance sport is about winning.
Yeah.
I think the well-being approach now more than ever is really like prevalent and at the forefront of what we do. Whereas I'm not too sure it was spoken about back then.
Oh,
It,
you're
it doesn't it doesn't
probably not.
necessarily mean it was wrong. I think we just didn't know what we
Well, you
know
only know what you
now.
know, and back in those
Correct.
days, they're modeling what they had. That's why I'm interested to see what your
Correct.
initial understanding of coaching was, because we tend to mirror that when we get
Yeah,
into coaching. So, were you fearful as a younger athlete of making mistakes?
absolutely. Yeah.
And that,
I was not even as a younger athlete, as a senior athlete with some of my coaches right through my career, I was fearful of making a mistake. And I still think that's also an athlete projecting as well. Like I think there will always be some sort of at the top level, some sort of maybe it's a hope that, oh, gee, I hope I don't stuff this up on the world stage. I think that's still there. I think we just take a lot more care in our approach to say, look, failure is part of the picture and it's part of the story. So I think we've kind of changed the dial a little bit on that approach.
It can be, you've got to be on that. We'll get to the high performance. You've got to be on that cusp of the risk factor. But if you're that fearful of making a mistake, when that risk factor choice comes, you tend to some be conservative because you don't want that finger pointed at you that it cost you, but it also can be the catalyst for winning as
Totally. And
well.
you also, as an athlete, you don't want to be a passenger either. Like, you want to
Ah,
contribute. So
exactly.
failure can kind of startle you, like the expression deer in headlights.
Yeah.
It truly does. I think having a supportive environment, win, lose, or draw, allows athletes to thrive. And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, in a team sport, someone is going to win and somebody is going to lose. And you might you might put a really good game together. Like, not every loss is a terrible game.
Yep.
Sometimes you just get beaten by a better opposition on the day, but you also played, a very well balanced game. It's just you weren't as good, or you weren't as finely tuned in one department, or you might have, lost your penalty shootout. So I think it's about also the reflection and the understanding of the situation is also really important.
Well, you got to lose to learn, don't you? If
Yeah,
you're winning
correct.
all the time and it's easy, then you become lazy and complacent, which can happen to the teams a lot. Now, just a quick reminder: if anyone's got any questions, please post them on the chat, and Glenn will filter them through as we go because we do love your participation. You as you grew, did you do the extra things yourself as an athlete outside of the pool? So you've got your work that needs to be done, but to get better, were you one of the ones that really, I
I
mean,
was a notorious overtrainer.
and in
Yeah.
the gym and all those
Yeah.
sorts of
I
things
was
yourself?
I
Yeah,
was too far the other way. Like, I was too far. And I think it was about the time that I was an athlete. I'll be really honest. I don't think I took enough, or I don't think I placed enough emphasis on, like, the mental well-being and I just made sure that physically, based on, like, rote learning, to have to pursue these, pretty hectic testing to make the national team, and I failed a couple early on in my career, and I generally think that for a long time I probably didn't, I guess, review or accept that that was a part of just the learning phase and the
yeah,
development of me and the maturity of an athlete. But I actually had a training camp recently with the N-Swiss head of strength and conditioning for water polo. He was at one of my camps helping me out now as a coach. And he said, Rowie, the first time I met you, I was filling in for someone at N-Swiss, and I got told that I had to just oversee a water polo athlete doing a watt bike session. And he's like, you were crazy. And I absolutely think I was. Like, I used to
yeah,
think that if I worked harder, if I was to fail, I would be able to somehow um get over it a little bit more easily. I think,
yeah.
like, if I thought, if I just work a little bit harder than everyone else, if I just do this, and it probably wasn't so balanced. But there was a couple of us like that in the national team, and
Yeah.
I think you have those type A athletes
Oh,
too.
you
I think it's
do?
part of the
And
story.
was it a tick the box for you when you got in the pool that I've done everything possible and I've led the way for I deserve to be here. Not that you didn't, but I've fought and forged my way into the pool. Was that part of the psyche for
I
that as
think
well?
so. I also think, um I'll be really honest, like, early in my days, there's only been three female Victorians to ever represent Australia at the Olympics. So Joe Fox, Victoria Brown, and myself. So, getting to a camp, we would come to camps, and there'd be, if there was a camp of 20 athletes, 10 of them would have been New South Wales athletes, five might have been from Perth, and five might have been from Queensland, or the mix up. And then you've got yourself, or, that makes 21. But, you definitely didn't necessarily have the allies early on until you cemented yourself. So I
Yeah,
think it was almost part of my own self-talk as
yeah.
well. Like,
And rite
Rowie,
of passage to be
yeah,
accepted
Rowie, you've
within
done
the
the
team.
work. You deserve to
Yeah,
be here.
yeah,
I also think it's part of my leadership style. I think I've still got that style and work ethic as a coach now. So I think it held me
That's
in
why I
good
want to
stead.
draw it out, because when you get to coaching, it's the expectations of what people think they're working hard, and you can measure on yourself early. It's a
Yeah.
Glenn, it seems we've got a couple of questions there. Did you want to jump in and
Yes, we have. I was going to wait until you got to Rowie's transition to coaching, but I'll ask it now. Rowie, who was the coach that fueled your desire to coach, and do you model any of their traits?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I've kind of adapted a lot of different coaching styles. I think in the past, Australia has had very hardworking, very tactically brilliant coaches. So I think my enjoyment of the tactics and the fitness and things like that has been brought from just my personal experience. But um, initially, it was from people outside of my sport, in terms of their approach to athlete well-being and things like that, that I almost connected the two together. And now, Eddie and Beck and Taryn and even, Simone Hankin, she used to come to some of our camps, and it was just a real privilege to be coached in a different style. And I think that's something that I've kind of taken with me, and adapted a lot of their really, really positive traits into, I'm trying to kind of almost assimilate some of my traits to theirs. But if I had to name one, I probably couldn't, to be honest. I've just taken a lot of coaches from a lot of different sports. And that was also a privilege about being in an institute as an athlete and as a coach. Like, there's a melting pot of coaches and athletes, so you can kind of, contribute it all.
And thanks to Gail for that question. Thanks,
Yeah,
Dave.
thanks, Gal.
thank you. Rowie, you had got to the captaincy, which is a huge honor. Did leadership, so that's coming through, leadership in the pool, did you have any help and development in that role, or you were your name captain and thrown into what was leadership like for you in that stage?
Yeah, I had captained an under 20 national team, and so I'd had some kind of captaincy opportunity, and then I was vice captain under Bron Knox for the Rio Olympics. So I think I had like almost a really nice runway into taking the top job.
Bit of an
Um,
apprenticeship, yeah.
an apprenticeship. It was a perfect example. And Bron and I were polarizingly different leaders.
Really?
She was very measured in her approach, very thoughtful, a bit more reserved, whereas I was like hustle and bustle, in first, out last, kind of a little bit louder, a bit more kind of at the forefront, like a bit rougher, I would say, in the
Yeah.
approach. But
What
yeah,
about your messaging in the pool to teammates under
it,
pressure? Was
yeah,
it
it
very
definitely.
direct?
Well, the later on in my career, I think I got a lot better at finding who needed what at what stage. I think that's part of the art of captaincy. We would have conversations afterwards um about who needs what and how do you need it. And some athletes were like, don't beat around the bush, just give me the message straight away. We don't have the time.
Yeah.
So I just want to hear it, and I want to hear it straight. It was definitely an easier way for me to communicate with those athletes. I had to,
Yes.
it was very, very innate for me to do that. Because I just wanted to get over it quickly too. You can't take the mistake or whatever it was, the miscommunication. You just can't take that into the next play. Like, you have
Yes.
to go play by play. But I understand that not everyone works that way. And that's true of society too. So it's all about learning what people need and when they need it and trying to get it right. And you don't always get it right. I think the relationships and the connectedness that we built, we were always accountable for our relationships. And I
Yeah.
think that's where we actually had a 24-hour rule kind of built in. It would have come from the 2016 cycle. So I did 2 cycles this way, and it was pretty much, if you had an issue or you wanted to kind of hot wash a conversation, or there was something that you just didn't understand that happened in the game, or you need more clarity on something, have that conversation within 24 hours or don't have it at all.
Yeah.
And that was a really beneficial thing, certainly for a very high intelligent female team. I think it was a real blessing to have that in place.
Absolutely. And it would have been very good honing your skills unknowingly, going into coaching, being in that leadership role to have those they're difficult conversations where
Totally. Yeah. They're chaotic, they're
you
passionate, they're,
in the heat of the moment too, under that pressure, how do I
yeah,
deliver this message with care and support? But we
correct.
need better performance and better standards and things like
Totally. And
that.
I think as I didn't necessarily review it and reflect on it so much as a captain, but certainly now as a coach, like I'm a big believer of, and it's a work in progress, don't get me wrong.
Of
It's
course.
about like connection over correction, I think. So you have to have a really strong foundation to be able to tell someone how it is straight away. And I think that takes time. And I think as athletes, it's a much there's much less of a power imbalance between athlete to athlete
Yep.
compared to coach to athlete. So yeah, it's a maneuver, and I'm adapting to that every day
Oh,
I
it's an
work as a
ongoing
coach.
learning process as
Absolutely.
you
It's a
get
work in
older. But
progress for sure.
I think what I'm trying to draw out is how important it is for women who are thinking of getting into coaching, but they're still in that later, they might be in a leadership role or
Hmm.
around leader, how important it is to develop those skills and take them with you into coaching as you said,
Totally. And
they're hard conversations at any
100%.
stage. Yeah.
And I
So,
also, I was privileged in the Gen 32 program to expose myself to really different ways of coaching
yep.
or the art of teaching. And I remember going to Melbourne Symphony Orchestra under a guy called Ben, and he literally conducted, he was the head conductor. He literally conducted a whole heap of musicians, all different musicians, via the tip of one, I would call it a stick, right?
Yes.
And so there has to be other ways we can find what works for each team, and you
Mm.
can't expect what works for one group of athletes, even if there's a crossover, to work with the very next. Like they have to buy into the process of how things work, how things want to be said, how messages want to be conveyed. And so I think giving athletes autonomy as well over, taking a step back as a coach and listening at how do you guys want the message, or you as the athletes, how do you deem it to be the best received? Because at
Yep.
the end of the day, they're the ones out there performing. Like, yes, we have a role to play, but I can't get in and block the shot for them, or sprint and change their body position or take that shot under pressure. Like I can't do that. So they need to have the courage to be able to do that. So I think it's a constant kind of art of finding new ways to get the message the way they need it.
It's a really good point, and something that I talk about a lot is it's situational specific. This I've been there, done it. It just doesn't exist, as you said. Different teams, different locations, different anything.
Even the rules, like the rules have changed.
Exactly in international rules and local rules, and hopefully
Yeah.
they can bring those together. But it's very good in understanding that you don't know it all, and you have to keep stay agile and adapt. I think going back to the times when we were athletes, it was a
Mm.
rinse and repeat and just keep doing the same thing, and you keep getting similar results after the time. So, what was your first step into out of the pool and into coaching? What drew you?
I think part of it was the
Did
fact
someone
that,
ask you, or you made the decision?
yeah, I think part of it was, I think captaincy is in water coaching, in a
Yeah,
team sport. I really do believe that. Like you get sent in a message from the coach, or there's a message comes through, and you're almost like the quarterback in a way. Like you're the ones calling the plays, or keeping things kind of alive in the pool. And so I always had a fascination with it. I
yep,
also understood the impact, just the personal impact that one of my coaches, Greg Richardson, we call him Spindles, had on my career. And I wanted to to help athletes certainly from Victoria have a pathway to success. And albeit they have to be the ones that do the work, but I also wanted them to have an opportunity with a coach that was, passionate about the sport. And so I kind of just took an opportunity that came. The CEO and the high performance manager of Water Polo Australia at the time, they said, Rowie, there's this inaugural Generation 32 scholarship. We think you should put your hat in the ring and have a go. And so I kind of thought, geez, I don't want to go back to teaching.
Yeah.
I was really considering the fire brigade on retirement. And then I thought, oh, why not? And I just kind of opened the doors. I was also extremely intrigued by the journey that the AIS was going on with the
Yeah.
Win Well strategy and
Yeah.
how that would then build a foundation for coaches in Australia, and obviously that ripple effect to athletes.
So you're
Um,
already working with high performance athletes going.
yeah, I
Yeah.
was, and
Yeah.
I wanted to contribute, and so I took an opportunity and
Yeah.
currently haven't looked back.
No, clearly not, which is fantastic. Glenn, you had a question? Hello, Glenn?
Glenn's gone.
I'm
Yeah.
back.
There we go.
You touched on it before, Rowie, but how much input do the athletes have into their training programs? Do you individualize their program? And if they are having contributions to their program, how much better buy-in do you get from the players during training and their preparation?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I guess it's a double-barreled answer. I think the maturity or the level at which the athlete is at is part of the answer. So if you have an Australian athlete or a more mature athlete, so maybe it's someone at college or things like that, or they've been in our system, they understand kind of what they need and how they need it. So I absolutely ask them at times, you know, what do you think you need? What would you like to work on? But again, I have to be really well planned and prepared, and that's kind of the type A personality of me. Is I've written a long-term periodized training, and you kind of tweak it as you go through. But I certainly think the autonomy for athletes to make decisions when their maturity allows them to, I think that's huge for buy-in. Um, at a more lower level, athletes don't really know what they don't know, so it's just exposing them um, to skill progressions and some sort of fitness and things like that. But I'm a big believer of, unless it's fitness or strength training, I don't want to teach the athletes anything that they won't use in a game. So if they don't know why they're doing a drill, um, I either haven't explained it well enough, or they feel like they're wasting their time. So I think that's something that I've taken from one of my later career coaches. And I thought that if you can do the very basics the best, you will win at the top level. And I think the Stingers have shown that. At the recent Olympic Games, is they didn't have long together under a new coach, but their skills and their commitment to their communication and integrity and accountability and all those things kind of shone through. So I also believe in that process too.
Thank you. Good question. When you first started coaching, we have an assumption of what we think that
Yeah.
the teams are going to be. It's sort of confronting when you get the reins for the whistle for the first time. What was your understanding of what you were coached to? Hindsight 2020 after that first small period, go, wow, I need to tweak X or Y. What really stood out?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me was I had just come back from playing in Olympics, and then I rolled into coaching. And I was probably too competitive and I wanted to win. I was probably too intrigued by the scoreboard. And so I had to almost unlearn a lot of things to be, and now I believe, a better coach than I was 3 years ago. Was unlearning that it's never about the final scoreboard. And so I plan my sessions based on realistically one question all the time is how can we win when the scoreboard's not in play? So how can I feel like these athletes have won the session and there was never a scoreboard
Yeah.
in play with it? And so
So at the
I
start, you were
didn't.
heavily focused on win, win, win,
I think I was just heavily focused on what I thought high performance was.
based on your pool experience.
Yeah, and
Your
also
exit, yeah.
based on the level that I played at. But not everyone wants to go to an Olympics, and they
No.
can be,
Yeah.
they can be really, really good AWL players, or they can be amazing state players, or they can be really great junior Australian players and not want to take the sport further. But what they will remember is how they're treated, and how I showed up every day. So, if I show up enthusiastic, well, I hope that is a ripple effect onwards. But I think I was definitely probably too harsh in my approach isn't correct, but I was probably too narrow focused, I think, about like, oh, what may people think if we don't do well? It's like, let's just get the process right.
Yeah.
And we will build on that.
The
And I
scoreboard will
think,
be a byproduct of what you
yeah, and I
do,
don't think we're anywhere near there as yet, but I think some of the biggest compliments people can give you is we see what you're trying to do. Like,
Yeah.
people in the crowd, we see what you're trying to do. We see the systems that you're building. And I think that just takes time. So I was a little bit kind of bull at a gate, I think.
Which is which is why I wanted to go so deep into your foundations of going to the coach. And another important one is how we measure you were so hard on yourself, committed, dedicated, do the extra things, push, push, push
Yeah,
till nearly am I going over the line or not? But what we can do as coaches initially is that becomes our yardstick of whether people are thinking they're working hard enough in your
yeah,
understanding of what working hard looks and feels like. Was that
correct.
something you had to search within yourself and get the balance right? Because some people just they are working hard, but your head's going, well, you're not doing that much extra. I don't see all that sort of.
Yeah,
How did you
totally.
navigate through that maze?
I think I got it wrong, firstly, so that, we do that full 360 and, we spoke about it earlier in the conversation about like that failure. I
Yes.
I got it wrong more than I got it right. And I did a lot of work on like gauging my own emotions. So I would, and I still do it. I get a VIS employee. He's a performance analyst, and a lot of my time with him is spent him filming me at training. So miking me up, filming my body language, um, because I can't see me. But if I'm
Yeah.
not giving off the right signals, then that directly will inhibit the athletes from being successful in some sort of percentage, right? And we're
Yeah.
talking, people cheat for less than 1%. So if I'm impacting someone 5% by my body language, like that's on me to be able to change, and maybe that's on them to meet me halfway, but I
Yeah.
need to understand that I'm impacting athletes. And so over the last 3 years, I have definitely grown in the space of, well, what am I projecting? How do I sound? What am I repeating?
Yeah.
How clear is my messaging? Is it calm? And I think that has been a really big work in progress, and it's also like extremely daunting, and it's off-putting to hear yourself or see yourself. And I didn't want to be the coach that I was like, oh no, that's not me. I really wanted to dig deep and kind of allow myself to be really vulnerable. And there was a lot of discomfort in it. And I think it's been a really big learning for me that you can change it. And, I use Beck Rippon as almost like a mentor in that space, and just seeing her growth and her progression. We can maneuver, and we can adapt, and we can sidestep to be something that we need to be right now. So I think it
Yeah.
takes work, and it's challenging, to be honest, but it's worth it.
I must say congratulations on doing
No,
that
thanks,
because
mate.
that is really, really challenging. It's very confronting. You know, if I get
Totally.
invited to review people in coaching boxes under pressure or things like that, it's and seek feedback. It's very hard when if you can go to coaching workshops, and I wanted to touch on development, but there's a lot of coaching workshops about, but role plays and scenarios is
Yep.
it's good, but there's nothing like being in the weeds with yourself and having
Totally.
to look and review that. So congratulations, but it's so developmental
Yep.
for your skill set, and you do see how you behave and how your body language is, how you,
Totally.
your
And
tone of
just,
voice under pressure when you want them to be calm and you're like
yeah.
raising your voice and getting animated.
And
So
I completely agree with you. And I think it's one of those things that one day I looked at my assistant coach at the time and I was kind of gauging, like, was I too harsh then? And she said, no, not at all. But she had known me as an athlete.
yeah,
And like, yeah, I might have been 30% less harsh than I would have been as an athlete, but it was probably still too harsh. And I remember looking and asking to the same performance analyst that had done all the work with me. I looked at him and I straight away looked at him. I said, Pete, too harsh? And he said, yeah. And he works directly with the Vixens. So, Simone McGuinness and things like that, amazing coaches who are also very direct. And I remember thinking, sometimes you can hide behind asking the people that you trust and they will give you an answer based on their natural bias towards you.
yes,
But what is the most, I guess, intriguing is getting an opinion of someone that doesn't necessarily know the sport so well and how they perceive it. That's been a really big game changer for me. You need your cheerleaders and your truth tellers, I
yeah.
think. So you need the people in your corner, but you also need the people that are going to say, nah, mate, like, you got to pull your head in, or this is not the best way, or um, and I think something that came up, which I was just a product of my environment and I never knew it was something to review, was it's something called controlling language. And I did it as a new coach. I would say if there was space for an athlete to move into, I would say move into the space.
Yeah.
But and it took a lot of kind of unlearning, which is what I spoke about before. It's now about upskilling the athletes in training to not tell them to move into the space, but asking them what they see.
Yes.
And then they'll say something along the lines of, oh, I see a whole lot of space. And then I ask another engaging question like, okay, how could you improve your positioning in the water? And it takes time. It's a little slower. But what I'm learning is it allows them to make real time decisions once they're aware of what they're trying to find.
It's a great questioning and it's a great relationship building with athletes, isn't it? If
Yep.
you initially ask, what are you seeing?
Yep.
Because you might have an idea of why didn't you do this or why didn't you,
Correct.
which is the preconception of you're seeing something unfold that they're actually in the water, as you would have seen an athlete, you go, well, I saw that space, I thought this or that. So you're getting real-time feedback, that hot wash, which is really important, what I do well, what
Totally.
I do better,
Yep.
which is really important. But it's hard as that leader, isn't it? That you, oh my God, that was so obvious. I can't.
And you want to get there quickly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
you
you
do.
want to
You
just
do.
get it done
Yeah,
and you want them to
yeah,
get better quickly. But
yeah. You've
yeah,
got to
things
help
take time.
them. That's part of the learning, isn't it? Sometimes it's a difficult lesson
Totally.
and it can hurt sometimes. But
Yeah,
Glenn, you had
100%.
another question.
Yeah, thanks, Damien, and also to Gail for the question. Rowie, when the World Aquatic Rules are updated and implemented, do you access a panel referee to do a session with your squad to help them understand the why and how to use the rule to your team's advantage?
Yeah, it's a great question, Gail, and absolutely. So I have the luxury of having one of Australia's top referees, Danny Flav, and so I invite him down to a couple of sessions a year for my athletes directly, and we gauge understanding first and foremost of, do the athletes actually genuinely understand the new rules, and then we as coaches and as athletes and as referees, we kind of sit down and say, like, how can we best manipulate these rules? And then obviously it's the responsibility of the coach to kind of really engage in a process to utilize those rule changes really well towards training and the skill sets that you kind of build around those new rules, and how that plays directly into the game for a better result. But yeah, I think it's a really important element, and they've certainly, FINA certainly chop and change the rules. So yeah, you have to gauge impact.
Thank you. Great question. You touched on it earlier for peers
Mhm.
from different sports as well, which is really interesting to see leadership in different areas, different arenas, different
Yeah,
things. The orchestra was a fascinating
yeah.
example. What's how highly do you rate going to watch other sports or learning from other coaches, and what made you pick different sports or events to go to?
Yeah, I've always done it as a
What drew you to that? It's interesting. I rate it. It's
curiosity.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
absolute curiosity.
So you think it's great for development?
Yeah, I am a massive daydreamer. Like, I am curious. I've always had a love of sport. Like, I grew up wanting to play AFLW. Obviously, I'm part of the age group that was too old. You couldn't
Yeah.
play after you were 12.
Yeah.
Um, I was always unbelievably competitive, and I just thought there's such a big crossover of skill. And so as an athlete, it was curiosity. Like, I remember getting the captaincy, getting told I was going to be captain, and I straight away rang one of my mentors at the VIS at the time, Bill Tate. So he had been a rowing athlete to a rowing coach at the VIS to an Olympic rowing coach, and now he's in high performance space in the para sport. But I remember being like, how do I get access to this coach? How do I get access to this leader? So, Lizzie Watson and I would do a whole heap of conversations. I'd just go for coffee. I'd gauge things predominantly around team sports and the fascination of collaboration and camaraderie and connection
Yeah.
and all those things. And then,
What about
um,
tactically as well?
yeah, there was a slight, I love patterns and space. Like,
Yep.
I just love, like, my partner's a professional soccer coach, and we call it football, but
Yeah.
I'll sit down, and I didn't really have much of an interest in football,
Yeah.
but I love the way the ball moves, how the best players find
So the
space,
creation of space and have the patterns.
how they
Yeah.
use different feet at different time.
Yeah.
And my fascination with Michael Jordan. And I'm a true believer of, like, it doesn't matter if the opposition know what you're going to do. If the standard of which you do it is better than they can defend it,
Yeah.
you will score.
And there's nothing you can do in that flow
Correct.
state.
Like,
You know it's coming, in fact, at high
a
performance.
hundred
Yeah.
percent. So
Yeah.
I guess my curiosity of that was just always
Yeah.
there. And I have, geez, my mentors, I have far more mentors outside of water polo in the world of sport than in water polo, just based on my fascination with other sports and how I can kind of, I guess, adapt and manipulate what they do into
Yeah.
what we do.
I was going to touch on the mentors and when you decided how important do you think they are, and when did you decide to allow someone to learn from them to help guide where you wanted to go?
Yeah, I think I've always had really good relationships with people. But I would say, again, the maturity of my coaching journey now more than ever, I deem them just so important. At the start, I was kind of a bit bullish. Again, I would say, like, I've just come off being an athlete. Like, I know the game.
Yeah.
It's far less about the tech and tack, way
Yeah.
more about the management of the game and players and the people and the staff. And so
So you have
I,
this bit of I got this because I've been at the high level, or just
I just
confidence
think
in
I
your
wanted
ability
to,
to sort of
yeah, I think there was just part of me that wanted to do it my way, I
yeah,
guess. I
yeah.
hadn't had the best experience late in my career with
Hmm.
coaches. Um, and so I was kind of risk averse to going their way. So I wanted to just think, well, if I can't do it that way, I want to do it my way, which ended up being a melting pot of everyone that came before me and
Can we
not
just touch on
reinventing
that?
the
That's a
wheel.
really important thread I don't
Yeah.
want to miss.
Go for it.
that last part of the career where you're having some adversity with the coaches
Mm.
did you feel your voice wasn't being heard or it wasn't respect? What did, because you'll take that into your coaching journey. What was uh, the touch
Yeah.
of that?
I think across my whole career, I was much better at connecting with the athletes than the coaches. Um, I really believe that, and I think,
Was that
um,
because players were more open to the relationship and the coaches at that time were
I
from
just,
an
yeah, I
era
just don't
that they weren't
necessarily,
receptive?
yeah, I just don't necessarily think I agreed with how they went about some of
Yeah,
the things that they did. I
yeah,
think more as a on a human level rather than
correct.
a
Okay.
tech tack level. Like they were brilliant tech tack. Like
Yeah,
I really can't fault the tech tack, but I think more on a human level. So I feel like I was a little bit disconnected
yeah. So the
from
softer
that.
skills?
Yeah,
Yeah,
potentially. Yeah. And so I kind of thought, well, I hadn't had a great experience, so why would I kind of choose them as mentors? But
yeah,
to be honest, I was just looking in the wrong place. Like I had one right under my nose in Victoria who to this day I have a great relationship with. And, he's been a fallback for life as well. And then now, I guess utilizing Eddie, Eddie was one of my all-time favorite coaches as an assistant coach in the Rio cycle, and then Beck being a friend, a teammate, and now someone I really look up to as
yeah.
a coach. I think I was just probably looking in the wrong spot, and I also didn't ask for help. And I think that's one thing that I've learned. Like if you speak up and say, "Hey, I'm actually really challenged by this. How do you see it?" People more times than not are willing to help you out, but you don't
Yeah.
want to be that person that asks for too much when everyone's really busy. But I think,
Well, it's not
yeah,
an
a problem
admission of
shared.
failure yourself from being such a high
I
performer to
just,
ask that I'm not sure. I don't.
yeah, I
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
just think you just know how stressful and how busy coaches are. So
Yeah.
just adding another thing on top of them, of, on top of their workload, I guess I was almost trying to be considerate, but in that I was just not considerate of my own development. And I think that
Yeah.
then hinders the athlete. So yeah, just being more open in that space of like, why do you do what you do? Where
Yeah.
has it worked? Where hasn't it worked? What are you seeing? Yeah, and that's been a real game changer for me.
Because it can be the loneliest place in the world, senior leadership,
It
the
is.
head coach or the
Yeah,
CEO or
it
whatever it
can
is.
be.
So
Yeah.
many people have got the fingers pointing at you for all the answers. And
Yeah.
internally, you're saying, sometimes I haven't got the answers. So you need that safe space yourself to be vulnerable to say what do you think and choosing wisely, as you said, is really important. But
Yeah.
the offload and information sharing is pretty important. And people want to help, don't they? If someone
Totally.
you
And I
want to
think
share.
I think it's the flaw of a lot of athletes, from my experience through a conversation. It's the flaw of an athlete to a coach is the first thing that goes is the coach's well-being, and that's on them to keep it up.
Yep.
And I just don't think I think we spend a lot of time worrying about other people. We end up going like, "Oh, I'll get to my stuff later." But if we can't show up at our best, we're not good for anyone. So I think what I'm slowly learning is like I have to have time for me. And I listen to I'm big on podcasts, and I listen to some podcasts about like, don't worry about what's down the road in 100K, like worry about what's right in front of you and
Yeah,
do a
be with your
really
feet
good
up.
job there. And so
Yeah.
just and don't necessarily like review the rearview mirror, but don't spend all your time looking in it.
Yeah.
um
Because we can build up a lot of scar tissue as a coach, and it makes
Totally.
it makes us almost impervious to other people and to comments. But you can't have too much scar tissue because then you become impervious to other opinions and learning and growth. So it is
Totally.
really important to,
And also the amount of footage that coaches watch. Like you can get absolutely stuck in the weeds and
oh, you can, yeah,
fixated on a play or a tactic or
yeah,
a positional mismatch that you missed. Like it can
yeah,
drive you insane. So it's almost just going, I've reviewed it, I've learned from it, I understand
yeah,
how to maybe pick up that error earlier.
yes,
and then go forward.
That hot wash is really critical, isn't
Yeah,
there's some deeper dives that you do, but what do we do well? What can we do better out of that? Learn the lesson and move forward. And you
totally.
don't dwell because you have band-aids everywhere. It's hard to rip them off.
100%, mate. You're
Yeah,
spot on. You're
yeah,
spot on.
all the time. What development do you wish you had earlier on? Was it the softer skills that you take into it? And as and aside from that, going from the pool to the pool deck and coaching peers, the boundaries, were you big on putting those boundaries around? Because there's some that are going to come out of local community sport, coaching their peers. How did you go about that?
Yeah, I think with the people, I'll start at the end.
Yes.
In terms of the boundaries, I think I wanted to always kind of get the elephant in the room out of the way. Like
Yeah.
I am now coaching some of my best friends, and they will forever be my best friends, whether I'm coaching them or not. And so they let you get away with a little bit more, but you also really want to be respectful and courteous of the boundaries. So I think acknowledging that there is already a high relationship, I would
Yeah.
say, I think that is fine. That's everywhere in life.
Yeah.
And I think making sure that you can switch on and off, like, okay, now we're at work, so let's get done what we
Yeah.
need to get done. And then when we're outside, it's like, okay, we're outside, and whether
So you put
that's
that framework around very clearly.
totally, and
This is
talk
the
about it.
office. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, talk about it. Like if we're at the
Yeah.
pool, how long do you need? Like,
Yeah.
hey, we're now buddies and we're going out for dinner. How long do you need as an athlete? And how long do I need as a coach
Yeah.
to kind of slow down everything and then go, we're done,
Yeah.
compartmentalize that, and then on
Yes.
to the friendship. And I think that has treated me well. It's always, I think you can't take the relationship of being teammates out of anything. Like I
Yeah.
truly believe if you go through so many huge milestones in your life with these people, it would be remiss of me to say that you just can kind of cut it off. And
You
I
can't
think
park it. Yeah. It's hard. Yeah.
correct. And I think again, it's about just setting really good boundaries. It's treating everyone with respect. It's acknowledging that you might have a higher connection with somebody. That's life as well.
Yeah.
And so
But
I
that
think
builds
just
trust over many years, though, doesn't
yeah,
it? You've been through the
yeah. And
hardships. Yeah.
I think integrity is a really big thing there, like treating people with respect and
Yeah.
valuing people's opinion and letting others have a voice and just having empathy for differences, I think
Yes.
is really important. So
Uh,
I answered that question and I forgot the first one.
No, no,
So
it was more. We're getting a few questions coming through, so I'll park mine for a minute. Glenn, you had a couple of questions you wanted to ask.
Yes, we do. Rowie, do the high performance coaches have a chat group where you share your thoughts and processes with training programs and other high performance issues?
not particularly in water polo, no. I think when we're all at the one camp, we definitely do. Like if you're involved in this Stingers camp, I can imagine it would be similar at the Sharks. Like you are privy to why you're doing what you're doing and that information. But in terms of like a holistic approach, or not that I'm aware of. So if you know of one, I'd love to be invited. But I do at the VIS. So we have a monthly coaches corner, we call it. So it's a monthly catch up, and we share issues. And I'm also part of another leadership program globally. So I have coaches from all around the world in my group. And so that's a really safe space for me as well. But from water polo, yeah, not particularly, no.
It's a great chat group to be in. I know Neil Craig has a similar chat group with leading coaches around the world.
Yeah, it's really, it's a real privilege to be part of that one.
Yep, just one other one, Damien, and then you've
Yep.
got 5 minutes to wind
Yes.
up the conversation. Rowie, do you feel that you're ready and confident, and you might be already, in mentoring other coaches who are traveling in the same direction as you?
Yeah, I definitely think I can share my story from my lens. Absolutely. I think we can all be mentors in a space. So yes, but I definitely I don't know it all. And so I think if I can help anyone on their journey, like others have helped me, then the answer is yes. I'm confident that I could share my wins and my failures as well, and my learnings. Absolutely.
Thanks. And over to you, Damien.
Thank you. Rowie, new coaches, one of the hardest things apart from the athletes themselves is partners, parents, and having that the periphery,
Yeah.
the external ecosystems, which you really have to be able to navigate with boundaries and clear frameworks as well. Without you have to acknowledge them, but
Yeah.
you have to manage them. And
Totally.
it's a hard thing for new coaches to, let alone coach people in the pool, but all of a sudden, why isn't so and so getting more pool time? Why is this? Why is that? Was that confronting for you? And how did you put your boundaries around to manage that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I still have this conflict in my mind every season I end up coaching. Like, it's fair, sport is expensive. Every family is making challenging choices to get their kid to where they are right now. So I hear it. And in everyone's eyes, you only had to ask my grandma when she was alive. I was the best player in the world in her eyes. So
Yeah.
I understand how emotional and like wound up people can
Oh,
get. And it's
very fiery.
absolutely
Yeah.
fair. You know
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
It's fair. But unfortunately, we cannot give athletes equal time. And I think we need to do a better job of kind of navigating that conversation and that education piece really early. And I think it's something that Water Polo Australia will look to do.
Yeah.
Because it is a challenge. But again, like anything, you have to put boundaries in. And even I've learnt the hard way with parents on pool deck and things like that it's really challenging. And I think it's something to remember for the parents certainly is we're also human. And at the end of the day, we have to make really tough decisions. Like I've just made a selection for my world champs, and I'll be completely honest. And I said this to Beck and some of my assistant coaches. Like I'm spending 90% of my emotional well-being on 5% of the players,
Yeah. On how you let
because
someone
it's
know
the
that
ones
they're
that
not
I'm
playing. Yeah.
correct. It's the ones that I'm going to cut. I
Yeah.
am spending 90% of my empathy on.
Who've done everything right.
Correct.
Ticked
Correct.
every box. They just don't, they're not the right fit or what.
Correct. And it's
Yeah.
never personal. And I think that's the really
Correct.
challenging thing is, yeah. And that's what I've had to learn is, you got to be pretty thick skinned and
Yeah.
it's emotional. So, yeah, just making sure that, if they need to be heard, I hear them. And then just making sure that I have the correct processes in place, that, I'm protected as well as a coach, which is really challenging. But yeah, I can imagine it's really emotional for a family. So I feel that as well as coaches. We're not, like you said before, that's when I think it feels really lonely, is around, we're basically the gatekeepers of people's dreams, of athletes' dreams.
Oh, absolutely. The maker and
And
breaker, as they say. But
yeah,
it's I and the reason I ask it because I think it's not taught enough to coaches, and I think we're not teaching parents. We're talking about it's very important for people to be active and be involved in sport. But being part of sport is that you are putting yourself forward to be judged.
yeah,
And as you get older and you get higher and then it becomes brutal on whether you get pool time, whether you're on the deck, whether you might be a sub for most of the time, or whether you
yeah,
don't make the squad and you have done absolutely everything right. But how
yeah,
do we teach the coach also that this is part of being a coach and making those difficult decisions is part because you lose that much sleep over
yeah. You
letting
do.
someone down rather than celebrating these people are
And
in
I,
do we
I and I
how do we get better at it?
and I think we need to be
Yeah,
completely honest. Like
same.
I have now been in two selection campaigns. And again, it's not about us as coaches, it's about the athletes. But I think we can do a better job holistically in Australian sport about coach wellness, and how we navigate that emotion. And I think some people are better than others at it. And I won't go into like male or female. I think
Yeah,
it's just who you are as a person and where you kind of sit on the empathetic scale. And at the end of the day, like you have to just keep in the forefront of your mind, like what is best for Australia right now? What is
yeah.
best style that we are approaching or trying to play? What's that best? And some fit and some don't. And it's not anything to do with who they are as a person or how skilled they are necessarily.
Yeah, but there's always the human element on both sides, isn't it? So I think
It sucks.
it's well, yeah, it does, but that's the beauty of sport as well. It's the most
Yeah,
emotional. It can bring nations together. It can bring people. It upset so many people. But these are the softer skills I think we have to bring into our development, and we're
totally.
training people as well because we lose people to games, to clubs for because they did make a team or did make a squad or
It's
whatever.
a
So
it
yeah,
you're not wrong there. I think it's a really heartbreaking thing to see when athletes don't make a squad or a team
yeah,
of yours and then
yeah,
they go on and leave the sport.
yeah.
I also think that that is a byproduct of high performance sport. Like,
Without doubt. But
yeah,
that's
I
what we've got to
also,
teach initially. You're going to put
yeah,
yourself in a position only to have the opportunity to get picked. It doesn't
totally
guarantee anything, and that,
correct.
well, yeah, we've got to work on it a lot more. Well,
100%.
we've got to wrap it up, and I feel like we're only just starting. It's such an awesome chat. Thank you so much. I had a wonderful time,
My
and
pleasure.
just the information sharing was incredible. That's why I think storytelling like this is so
Yeah,
important
definitely.
to help people. But thank you so much for sharing so much of yourself. It was absolutely fantastic.
Thanks for your time, mate. Appreciate.
You're welcome. Over to you, Glenn.
Don't hang up yet, Rowie, because
No, no, all good.
we have a bit of an off the record one once we finish recording. I believe you both just answered the question that Gail put to us just towards the end, but she can ask it again once we come off camera.
Sure.
On behalf of Water Polo New South Wales, we'd like to thank Damien and Rowie for tonight's session. It's been fantastic over the last 5 or 6 weeks. The openness and the honesty of all the coaches that have been on the conversations. I think you would agree with that, Damien.
Oh, just brilliant, Glenn. Yeah,
We,
fantastic.
we would also agree that the women's game at the high performance level is in great hands based on the
Yeah.
appearances and conversations of all the coaches that we've had. And we congratulate Water Polo New South Wales on their appointments in that area. Wish to also thank all of the participants, the attendee participants who have joined us over the last 5 to 6 weeks. I think we've developed a bit of a cult following with the same
Yeah, thank
attendees,
you, everyone. Absolutely. I
same
concur.
attendees each week. What we would like you to remind you is that all the conversations have been recorded on the Water Polo New South Wales website. We encourage all of tonight's participants to share that with your coaches at your clubs. And also your players. I think they'd be of great value, the conversations for players at your clubs as well. So look for that on the Water Polo New South Wales website on the coaches tab. And we also, given that this is a final session, trust that Water Polo New South Wales are successful in securing ongoing funding to continue the Her Sport, Her Way program for coaches in the women's game. But once again, thanks to everybody, and we'll wrap up the session and look forward to the next program. Thank you.